the manosphere has stolen something from boys, which is like kind of, he didn't use this language, I'm using this language, but like their childhood. Because if you start engaging in that content that says you need to be sexually successful, in quotes, so basically like there's something wrong with you as a person if women don't like you, if you can't pick up women, if you can't, walk down the street and get a girl's number, if you're not having sex, there's something wrong with you. It puts this pressure on, I think, young boys that feels more intense than maybe your friends making jokes at school. Like if you have friends at school, I think before it was like you felt pressure to be liked by girls because you wanted to be cool in front of your friends, but really none of your friends were sleeping with those girls. Whereas when you're comparing yourself to these 30-year-old men who are telling you how you should behave in interactions with women, how women should be responding to you, that you should be sexually desirable, and you're consuming that at an age where there's no possible way you're going to be sexually desirable. A 13-year-old boy is not sexually desirable to anybody. You're going to feel inadequate, like you're doing something wrong, like you're a failure. Like there is no like learning.
And what's wrong with the girls your age that they're not coming on to you that way?
Better days when you're here with me, babe, because you're all that I crave. So I wonder.
Hello. Welcome to Therapy Rebranded, hosted by JaVale Lashel Carroll.
And Rachel Collins.
No, Bernice. The big burn.
The biggest burn.
The big burn. Bernice.
Bernice. You actually want to know something? I actually like when people call me Bernie.
That's you guys have hilarious middle names.
The whitest.
Bernie's so
whitest. Jew. It's so Jewish.
Bernice
Wolf is who I'm named after.
There's this great Tom Waits song where he used the word where he talks about Bernice.
I sound like an overweight Saint Bernard.
My brother is a boy, but when they were coming out and they thought he might be a girl, his dad wanted Prudence. We were like, absolutely not.
Whoa.
What?
He's like, Prue would be cute. I'm like, no. Absolutely.
I know some really
I kind of like it now.
But we agreed on Lenny if it was a girl. So thank God that didn't happen.
Shut up, really?
No, I'm not kidding. Yeah, after George Lennon.
That's cute.
Lenny.
Were they both obsessed with
We're going to do
Beatles?
Lennon and then do Lenny as the short. Isn't that cute?
That's
really
awesome.
Cute.
Yeah, but it didn't happen. What's your daughter's long? Is it Lennon?
No, it's Lenny.
Lenny.
Is the full name because it's after
Lenny, the
comedian Lenny Bruce.
Yeah.
That's cute.
Yeah. All the depictions I've seen of Lenny Bruce made him very cool and a badass. Do you think that was real, Gabe?
Well, it is, but he was also pathetic and very troubled and died in the bathroom like I'm going to. Mm-hmm. And
hopefully when your kids are old, though.
I hope so. I mean, that's the plan.
Hopefully they won't.
But I'm definitely going down in the bathroom.
Have whatever broad that's taking care of you at the time come find you. Don't have your kids find you.
I sure hope so.
Yeah,
because I won't call an ambulance if I'm not feeling well. That's for sure.
Shut up.
No, I'm serious. 100%.
This is why men live longer than they have women, because they drive them to the hospital.
Do you actually want to know? This is super random, but I just thought about this. If I actually had to go to the hospital, you're going to judge me. I think I would call you.
Why would I judge you for that? I'm the most sane person in your life.
Calling an ambulance.
Huh?
Instead of calling an ambulance, I think I would call you to come.
I mean, literally, with your age, the only way I would say take an ambulance instead of getting a ride is if you were bleeding out or having a heart attack or an aneurysm. Those would be the only ways. That would be the only ways I would judge you. If it's anything else, you can go. I literally broke my arm to the point that my wrist was dangling off and I walked. I'm not doing an ambulance bill. I'm not doing an ambulance bill.
I've never been.
I literally heard the bone crack. Got up and was like, I guess I'm walking.
She called me or you left me a voicemail. I was like, what?
After.
After.
Yeah, after I sat in the ER for 2 hours.
I almost cut my finger off in a saw
and
or
you
whatever.
Put that shit back on and drive.
And I sprayed a rooster tail blood on the wall. That's how I found out.
Ooh.
And I covered it. And it was like I was scared to look. Like, oh no.
Oh yeah. When you know, you know.
And my neighbor saw me. Like I wrapped all these paper towels around it. I wrapped all these paper towels around it. And my neighbor saw me outside. I'm holding it up like a torch. And it's just red. It had soaked through.
Yeah.
And he's like,
hey, Bill, look at
Gabe,
this.
Yeah.
Do you need a ride or anything? And I was like, no. Like, I'm good.
Did you drive?
I tried to. What's that?
Did you drive?
I drove myself, and I almost got in 5 accidents on the way, and then I pulled myself.
Because you had to hold a hand up, which is like not.
And I was panicking, kind of. Like, and I lost a ton of blood.
Yeah. My grandma drove herself my dad's mom drove herself to the hospital when she was having a heart attack.
Crazy.
Yeah.
The only time I've called my friend Patrice one time because my leg got sliced open.
Ooh.
And
You have a scar.
I was like, oh, I called her. I was like, when you have time, I need stitches.
When you have time.
She's like, I'm coming.
It's crazy.
Oh, because I knew she was sleeping. I'm like, wake up. Because she works overnight. Because it was one of those, like, I couldn't get it to stop bleeding. And then, like, I don't know if I said this on this podcast, but I had my EMT license before.
Oh,
so
wow.
I can do
didn't know that.
Yeah, so I let it lapse when I got my therapist license. But I was like a licensed EMT. And so I was like trying to do shit at home, and I was like if your skin won't like go together, you gotta go in.
How'd you cut it?
Excuse me.
I was moving out, and I had thrown something away into a bag, and it broke in the bag, and it had some glass in it, and so it sliced through the bag and then sliced through my calf.
Ew.
Just want to feel good, huh?
I just wanted that boyfriend to
I'm
take me
joking.
back. I just needed to send pictures with the blood so he would know. This is what you did to me.
That literally just popped into my head, though. I was like,
Oh, yeah, that didn't happen with your friends. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever. I've like always been going, like, I don't have any pain for like the first hour every time something goes wrong. And then I don't know if my body just shuts down or what.
It's just adrenaline, right?
Yeah, you're just like,
I have to watch.
And it's embarrassment.
Like, look at shit.
yeah, you're just like, oh, here we go.
But yeah, no, I was thinking like, I don't actually like, I was like, who would I consider? I think you're actually like unknowingly my emergency contact for a lot of things.
It's fun. And then I was, when I went to urgent care, they thought I was overplaying it because I was too calm. I was like, I need stitches. They're like, okay.
You got treated like a black woman.
I was like, okay. No, it wasn't even that. I like went somewhere kind of in the hood. There was like black people working there. But I think I was just so calm. They were just like, yeah, okay. And then we went back there and they opened it. They were like, oh, you need stitches. I was like, I need stitches.
I need stitches.
I just do the stitches and you leave.
How many times have you had stitches in your life? Just the ones?
I've had surgery, so I don't know.
That's true. I've had surgery.
I've had surgeries. I have a plate in my arm. I'd like,
yeah.
I stitches tons.
Did you ever get your
Really?
appendix out? I got my appendix out.
I did not get my appendix out, no. Yeah, I have a plate in my arm from when I broke it.
I got stitches when I took my lower rib out, and then I also
Your lower rib?
That was elective,
Oh, yeah.
and then
Bad bitch.
So you could suck your own dick.
yeah, but then no, yeah, twice. Bottle busted over my head.
What?
You deserve it.
What did that have to do with
No,
your
I
lip?
absolutely didn't.
Yeah, I was
Actually,
just
for
kidding.
once in my life.
Wait.
Hold on, we're on a time crunch.
Yeah,
now.
we're
Okay, you're right.
You're on a time crunch.
Okay,
We're
go.
talking
We're
about.
already 8 minutes into the hour.
Okay,
and
go.
I wanted to go for only 30. Okay. So, what we're going to talk about today is the Netflix show Adolescence.
Shit's crazy.
It's about a 13-year-old boy named Jamie who's been radicalized by online content and is an incel. And this is 4 episodes. It's a mini series. If you haven't seen it, I don't know where you've been, Gabe.
Literally, where have you been? Everybody's
I'll be
talking
catching
about
up
it.
this week.
And
for
it
real.
created like a
Do
really
not watch it with your kids.
interesting. Thanks. Like his wife doesn't got that covered. Ex-wife, sorry. Do you let your kids watch PG-13? You better.
Oh, I mean, I absolutely would and have for sure. Like, 'cause
Also,
we watched Goonies.
my
We
dad
watched.
That's not real PG-13. That's not
Beetlejuice.
now PG-13. I'm talking about now PG-13.
What's an example of now?
This
I don't
is
know.
R, actually.
No, hell no. You can't watch this. Doesn't matter.
I wouldn't watch
Anyways,
this because
okay,
of the
anyway, no,
psychological
keep going.
kid thing. Yeah.
it would freak your kids out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I go to
don't
I go to
want that.
school with kids like that.
Yeah.
And your son would be like, "Can I become that?"
It's on the spectrum of possibilities.
So it started this really interesting conversation online about like incels and whether or not the show was like accurately characterizing incels. So basically, this kid is accused of stabbing a classmate to death. And by the end of it, we see video that he actually did stab the classmate to death. And then it kind of characterizes just like the beginning of the process of being arrested, of like the family spinning, of the parents kind of trying to deal with it. He meets with a psychologist or a psychiatrist. It's kind of unclear.
Yeah.
Throughout the session or throughout the show, he meets with her. And so I think it's just kind of, it almost feels like a time stamp of like, this is what might happen, like if this happens to you, and like what do you think, and those kinds of things. And one of the conversation that's coming up about kind of from this is was this written from the perspective of a woman and like, is this accurate? A lot of people, I don't know if the director was a female or a woman or the writer, but a lot of people just being like, this is a feminist take on male masculinity, which I didn't agree with.
I haven't seen that take. That's so interesting that people are saying that.
Yeah, because it opened this conversation around like, okay, what is an incel? What creates incels? Whose fault is it that we have incels? And what does that look like?
Is there not? Kind of things like that, yeah.
What is an incel? Like, if you were to define it, I guess.
I would say it's so hard.
You gave me a good definition earlier.
Not really. I think
so.
And so incel, like the term means involuntarily celibate. But I would say that it's not just about being celibate or involuntarily celibate. It's about participating in the online culture. And the incel online culture is this notion that women are bad. They have too high of standards. Men have lost what it means to be a man and need to regain that through dominating women.
And the thing you said earlier that really stuck with me too, we were talking about this a little bit off camera, is that they believe that yes, women should lower their standards, but that that's like their job is to roll. Like that's like the part that they underline is that women have too high of standards. They need to lower them. And that's the reason why they can't connect with women. Mm-hmm. Not because they're inadequate, actually. Mm-hmm. Is that true?
It's that women think they're too fucking good.
Yeah, that.
Yeah.
So throughout the show, they referenced Andrew Tate, which I thought was interesting.
Wow.
They referenced him by name.
That's pretty heavy,
several times.
I thought it was too.
And I was like, is he going to sue them? Like, it's just really interesting. And then they did like red pill, blue pill, right? So the Matrix reference. But the incel thing for the red pill is red pill are men who see the truth about women and blue pills are normies. So men who believe in society's portrayal of women. And so men who see the quote truth about women see them as people who need to be dominated and submissive and have lost their place in society.
The red pill content.
The red pills, yeah. So there was a lot of interesting things about this. I guess there was, the conversation around who created the incel or what is the incel a reaction to, I thought was really interesting. And just in terms of like, why do we have this group of men? Another thing that was really interesting is like, who is susceptible to this online content, right? So if you think about all of these teenage boys and young men, I don't know. If you're over 40 and susceptible to this content, I don't know what to say.
Lost cause.
But
what actually, are you past an incel or do you have something like so?
No, you're never past an incel. You're still an incel, but it's called like the manosphere.
Yeah.
It's like those podcasts that are kind of
broy,
not even that, just like trying to lift men up through tearing women down. And so, it's kind of like, okay, if you had a teenage kid, like real question as a therapist, what do you think is the difference between like a teenage kid who could consume incel content and not become an incel versus one who consumes that content and falls victim to it?
What's the difference between those two kids?
Yeah. Why is one kid more vulnerable and impressionable to that than the other kid?
I think my first thought is like parent interaction, actually.
Okay, say more.
Like how much parents are integrated into kids' lives. And I think, that goes two ways of like there can be kind of like the hovering parent. But I do think in this day and age with how much kids are online and how much access they have to online content, like there has to be some level of monitoring or checking or checking in with your kids. And I think a lot of parents think that they're doing enough but that they...
What did monitoring or checking in look like with incel content?
Specifically with incel content? I don't know what it looks like specifically with incel content, but I feel like if you find that your child is specifically like looking into that content, you need to start having like more different conversations with them. About their beliefs about women, about their beliefs about themselves. Do they believe that they're, unattractive? Do they believe that they can't get us, all types of like their self-esteem. I feel like that's the first tendrils of like toxic misogyny and thing. Well, misogyny is toxic, but all those things. So
is misogyny misogyny? I said masculinity.
No, yeah.
I think, when I was thinking about it, what came to my head that made you vulnerable was totally the parent piece. I feel like that's a huge, huge part of it. whether or not your parent is talking to you about the difference of like what's happening online versus in person, being reality or not reality, and like also kind of pulling you back into like what is the norms and where should you be.
Parasocial relationships. Called? Yeah.
I think poor social skills makes you vulnerable because I think you're going to spend more time on the internet alone if you don't have social skills.
With other people who don't have social skills.
Yeah, I think, even kids who spend tons of time on the internet but are gaming with their friends from school have a totally different internet experience than people who are gaming with strangers online.
Agreed.
And creating relationships in forums with strangers, like going into a chat room to get your social needs met versus Snapchatting with friends that you play basketball with are very, very different pieces. You're interacting with
people you know in real life.
But also people who probably share life experiences with you. And that's kind of what you're talking about. You're talking probably more about what you have than what you lack, I think.
And if you're like talking shit with like the guys on like something like that, like there's real life consequences to like what you say. Like if you talk too much shit about somebody's mom and you go to school the next day, you're going to like be ostracized. But if you talk shit or say something weird to some weird person on the internet, you get to walk away. So there's this feeling like there's no consequences.
But I really think it's like the poor social skills piece and then low self-esteem. And then I do think, just like, I was watching this podcast. He went on Next Gen and they were interviewing William Costello, and he's an incel expert. And it was really interesting actually, because what he was talking about is how like the manosphere has stolen something from boys, which is like kind of, he didn't use this language, I'm using this language, but like their childhood. Because if you start engaging in that content that says you need to be sexually successful, in quotes, so basically like there's something wrong with you as a person if women don't like you, if you can't pick up women, if you can't, walk down the street and get a girl's number, if you're not having sex, there's something wrong with you. It puts this pressure on, I think, young boys that feels more intense than maybe your friends making jokes at school. Like if you have friends at school, I think before it was like you felt pressure to be liked by girls because you wanted to be cool in front of your friends, but really none of your friends were sleeping with those girls. Whereas when you're comparing yourself to these 30-year-old men who are telling you how you should behave in interactions with women, how women should be responding to you, that you should be sexually desirable, and you're consuming that at an age where there's no possible way you're going to be sexually desirable. A 13-year-old boy is not sexually desirable to anybody. You're going to feel inadequate, like you're doing something wrong, like you're a failure. Like there is no like learning.
And what's wrong with the girls your age that they're not coming on to you that way?
Right.
Like an adult woman would with an adult person or something.
Right. And so I think it destroys your self-esteem in a lot of ways because you start out feeling like you're behind, but you're supposed to be behind. And that's the part that's missing that you're not experiencing, is that you're supposed to be behind. And like, this isn't a reflection of you being a loser or always being a loser, or you're going to be a loser because you're not successful in hitting on women. I think most men don't get those skills until like college or beyond, if they even get, the skills to be able to pick up a random person. I think a lot of men don't even have the skill set to go home with a random woman.
Agreed.
And that's fine.
Do you feel like there's things, and like they talk about this a little bit in the show, but there are things that parents do, maybe even unintentionally, that push their kids towards like incel behavior that you run into, or that
How did you see that on the show?
In the show, I feel like they mostly talked about it at the end when the parents are kind of grieving together, kind of all the stuff that's happened. And, the mom is kind of asking, where did we go wrong? And we tried our best and we still didn't do enough. And so I think, it's maybe is the dad too abrasive, and they kind of inserted like, is he abusive? Is he controlling? Is the mom just kind of passive? They kind of inserted different things that are like inconclusive in the show. But
or can the dad be saying all the right things, but what the kid sees in the home is the mom, like,
right,
like running over him or something.
Right. There's kind of all different.
I felt like they intentionally, my opinion was in the show, they intentionally made it not the parents' fault. Like they intentionally left out anything that was like an obvious indicator that their kid would turn to violence. I think what they kind of processed together at the end as parents was like, yeah, our kid withdrew from us, and yeah, he spent a lot of time in his room and on his computer, but that's all I thought it was. I thought it was normal teenage behavior. I think that it's hard for me to say what the parents should have done differently, except to kind of like Rachel said earlier, just have more conversations.
But like in real life, like what do you think parents are missing? Is it that? Like is that, do you think that's
I don't
like
think this would have happened in real life.
Okay.
I don't think that you go from no violent incidents to stabbing somebody. I think that's something that's unrealistic about the show and not like what I see. I work with people with homicidal ideation.
Right.
Like most people don't just snap and stab someone out of nowhere. Certainly not a kid who's decently good at school, decently good at sports, has friends, popular at school, not socially weird looking. He's a normal looking kid. Like
people like escalate in stages normally.
He, in theory, should be getting like enough validation from peers, I think. And then also like he hasn't demonstrated any kind of violence. And that was one of the things about the show that was a really hard juxtaposition. So in the first episode, within like the first 10 minutes, the police come in and they have their guns drawn and he pees himself and he's like shaking, basically. They bring him in, they let him change his clothes, they bring him in. And that was like a really hard thing for me to wrap my head around is like, I'm watching this person who's so afraid that they're peeing themselves of just like police coming into their room, but then are stalking people and murdering them. And it, obviously like a grown man with a gun is a lot more threatening than a teenage girl walking by herself.
Right.
But just like having the balls to do that was the part that was like a little bit unrealistic to me.
And you see him get kind of like big and like, but with a grown woman later. So you're also like, yes, guns and grown men in your room, but he also like does have like seems to have like an inflated sense of.
Only with women.
Yeah. Yeah.
He doesn't act like that with men at all throughout the show. So that also is interesting.
Do you guys think it's common for incels, whatever, to occur in their teens? Like in the wild?
I don't know. That's what we were talking about off camera is like, at what age could you even become an incel? Because I think the notion that you're involuntarily, quote, celibate and something's wrong with you at 15 feels off to me. Like, I think it's normal to not have the skills to like successfully get someone else to want to have sex with you at 15. Like, I think we're crossing into weirdo range, like post-college, I don't know, or even college.
I guess it's helpful when you put the specific caveat in that it's like, it's about women specifically. It's about sexual prowess specifically with the incels. I guess in my mind, when I said like 6 or 7, which obviously like they shouldn't be thinking about anything like sexual. They don't have those desires quite yet. And girl,
they don't even think about anyone but themselves until after 10.
But I'm saying,
till after 30.
But I feel like, there's early on, like, isn't there, I'm being super like, hypothetically, there are kids who like show signs of things early on. And so that's what I'm thinking of. Maybe that's not an incel, but that's like.
Signs of what?
Do you mean like in
mimicking their dad's toxic masculinity?
Cultures?
That doesn't make them.
But that's what I'm saying.
But that's not incel behavior.
So that's what I'm saying. It's like, that's not incel behavior. But when you were asking, like, is that, I'm like, well, that's like the start of that stuff, I feel like.
No, I feel like that makes you vulnerable to becoming an incel, but I don't feel like that's incel stuff. Yes. And I think that's the thing that I think women and men who like struggle with teen boys and younger boys is like maybe overreacting to normal male behaviors or like normal kid behaviors, but because it's a boy doing it, people freak out. Like if your kid is under 10 and they're acting that way, it's because they're mocking an adult, like they're mimicking an adult in their life. It's not like their core beliefs.
Right.
And I think us as women are so used to being terrorized by men that they're like, oh God, it's coming, it's happening. And it might be happening, but also they might just be trying this on. So maybe just have the appropriate response and it will go away.
Redirect.
One thing this guy, William Costello, said that was really interesting was that incels, when they're talking online, aren't actually targeting women. Like, yes, the women are who they're talking about negatively, but who they're trying to get to agree with them are other men. They're actually trying to build the incel community. So they're trying to get more men who see women the way that they see women. It's not really about women agreeing with them. They don't care. They're trying to get other men to see the world the way that they see the world, because if there's one guy going around trying to get women to lower their standards, they're going to get brushed aside. If there's half the male population is trying to get women to lower their standards,
which they are,
I don't know about half.
There's a ton of it out there.
Yeah, then women have to start to consider whether they want to lower their standards and what that looks like, because that's part of the norm and that's part of dating.
Yep.
So it changes the conversation. If you get more people involved, you're not the weirdo.
It gives it some like truth and power in the conversation. Like this is a perspective.
Totally. The other thing that I think has happened over the last 30 years is that female liberation has continued. And so women have more freedom and more ability to provide for themselves. And they have more options that they're not going to be socially ostracized. Like there's less social consequences to not getting married and having children. And so because it's not a need, it's turned into a want. And these men have to be desirable in some way and are not able to be or don't know how to be. And so then rather than changing who they are to be desirable, they are trying to bring women down to their standard. Just lower your bar. You want too much. This is not, you want too much. This is, I really think about how for the majority of human history, like men just had to provide and that was it. You did not have to be liked.
It's also harder to be upwardly mobile than it has been in years, too. Like, you know, with the way that our current economy is and our current structure is, we're getting more wealth is like migrating to the poles, you know, more and more. You know, right? Like the middle class has shrunk.
Mm-hmm. What does that have to do with men?
It's hard to be as desirable.
It's hard to be desirable financially, and so you have to be desirable in other ways, and they either don't have the skills or don't want to have the skills.
Yes.
And I think when you get wrapped into this group, there's social consequences to being desired by women, because like if you're going to be desired by being soft and emotional, well then you lose your male friend group. Right. So you also get pigeonholed when you're in that corner. Right. Mm-hmm. Because then pivoting your personality in any way to be appealing to women will then negatively impact you in terms of how other men in that group see you. Your social standing. Yeah. Your social standing in that group. Mm-hmm. And we all know because of patriarchy, having social standing with men is honestly more important than it is with women, especially if you're not. I mean, if you're involuntarily celibate and you're at a certain age, at a certain point, like you might not ever have real intimacy with women. Like, yes, maybe you'll have sex with someone, but you're probably never going to have a bond like you have with those incels online. Mm-hmm. It's probably never going to happen. Nobody's going to validate. And so at some point, that becomes more important.
Yep.
Is it possible though that just a way that I see it that might be slightly different is that again,
you might see it differently.
Again, lots of bias here. But that we're also in a culture where a lot of men tried the touchy-feely, tried to listen, like do that, and then it failed the same as, you know, at the same rates that all relationships fail. Mm-hmm. But that there's some like rebound, like anger from that makes them more susceptible to this stuff.
That might be true, but that means like that they see that as a tactic to like getting women instead of like a way of like, that's just how you could.
I don't think it's that. Like, I mean, I think it was earnest. That's why it's hurtful.
But I also think they got equally rejected by other men.
Yeah.
For sure.
Right.
Sure. Like, I mean,
which isn't a blame thing.
It's more of a failure, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, I tried to do the right thing. I tried to, whatever. I bought into it and it failed and fuck that.
Yeah. But it's crazy that, like, even that thought, Pat, like, that's a very, like, men in general think, like, women don't.
No, but that's what men do for mating all the time.
Yes, we do. It's the same. It's the same women who are like,
but not
the female version of that is like, I pretended to have sex with him. I pretended I liked, like, women alter their personalities in disingenuous ways to get men to like them too.
Yes. Sorry.
That's not male.
No, not about the disingenuous, but I'm saying that specific thing about like feelings and emotions specifically. Like they won't interact with those things specifically, I feel like. In a cultural way. I don't
know, man.
Not the not doing things to like get things, of course, but like.
I don't know, man. I disagree with that. Like I have a lot of male friends who probably cry to me more than the people, their wives, and it's not, and it's because I'm nicer about it.
Yes.
Like, I also think I hate to say Gabe's right, but I think a lot of women were being disingenuous when they said they really wanted their man to do feelings. I think they didn't want their man to be as angry anymore. Yes. They didn't want as much anger, and I think they wanted their men to have more empathy when they have feelings. But they for sure did not want their man to cry at home. Sorry, they were lying.
No. I agree with that. I thought we were talking about, like when men and boys are like introduced to the ideas of feelings and like emotions, it's introduced to people like in a gendered way. Yeah. And so I feel like that's part of it too, is like they're not ingratiated. But yes,
I don't disagree. But what I was responding to is when Gabe had said that men tried to do that.
Yes. I thought he was
for female partners and they didn't want them.
Yes. Sorry.
And teens too.
Yeah. Yeah.
You tell me that a man cried to you at 15 and you would have thought it was cute. Hell no.
It actually did. My first boyfriend was, we were like, but that was like my boyfriend at the time. And I was crying too. But like a random guy, no. That's like anybody. Do you know what I mean? But I was like a lover girl. So like I was sad too.
You guys crying together is not the same as him crying to you.
But I think when boyfriends cry to me, like I don't mind that. It's somebody who I don't care about.
But we're talking about if the guy says like, and just the way when you were talking to him, it made me feel like I was alone, and that made me not feel good or whatever it is. And you'd just be like,
I don't think I've ever had a man cry to me then about like that specific type of thing, like my ex. But I was like wanting that at that point. Like I don't think I've ever like.
Okay.
Yeah.
The other thing that was super interesting, so there was two last parts I wanted to talk about, but so this guy, he did a study. There was a study, the largest incel study. I wish I could go through like every single individual piece. One, we don't have time. Two, you had to pay $60 to get the whole study, so I only found the key findings.
Yeah, fuck no.
But there was just some interesting information about people who are incels. So demographics.
How did they get people to identify themselves as incels for the fucking thing? That's
a great question. Incels were typically in their mid-20s, heterosexual and childless. Though the majority of blah, 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 42% of them were people of color. Most people consider themselves from a middle class or lower class background. Most had some kind of post-secondary school education and were living at home or renting. Very mixed picture when you hear that, because one, I think that we think of the incel as right-leaning white guy in his 30s, 20s in a basement somewhere. I don't think of them having had gone to college, to be honest. Next was mental health. In line with previous research, incels typically display extremely poor mental health with high incidence of depression and suicidal ideation. 1 in 5 incels contemplated suicide every day for the past 2 weeks. I think that's really, really interesting, because one of the really big risk factors for somebody actually killing themselves is them being like very lonely and not having a bright outlook of the future. And I would imagine if you were an incel, you feel both. Attitudes and beliefs. Participants perceived high levels of victimhood, anger, and misogyny. They also acknowledged a shared worldview among incels, which includes identifying feminists as a primary enemy. Neurodiversity. About, what was the?
1/3.
1/3 of them have autism or could be tested for autism. Basically, they did a medical questionnaire that was brief, that was like, signs that you have autism, and most people scored highly. The people who did the 30% scored highly on it. So a good percentage of them have autism.
Around 80%, it says, who scores 6+ on the measure going to receive autism. Okay.
Political beliefs was really, really interesting. So they weren't all right wing. A lot of them were pretty, quote, liberal and centrist. And
I believe it.
yeah. The only thing that he said in the podcast that was interesting about people being right-wing extremists was that incels who are extremist have a higher likelihood of being violent, which makes sense. Because if you're extremist, you have a higher likelihood of being violent, period. But I just think it's really interesting because I don't think anybody thinks about incels as liberals.
Probably not.
I actually see it, like personally, of course, I believe it skews right, but I really, maybe it's just because I've seen too much of it in my life now. Like it's very prevalent. Mm-hmm. There are at least like some measure of it. I'm not saying like many men go full on incel. Yeah. But parts of this belief system, you know what I mean?
I mean, it lines up with like the notion that people believe, which is like the feminist guy who beats his wife at home. Like he wears a feminist t-shirt, but he's actually terrible to his wife. Like he's using it as a cover.
I don't even fucking trust guys who say that I'm a male feminist. I'm like, yeah, you're fucking weird. There's something wrong with you.
Because it also should just, one, be assumed that you think women deserve equal rights. I don't know why we're announcing it. Right, and I don't know why you're using the term. Like, all of that just feels performative to me. Like, if you have feminist in your bio, you're a weirdo. I'm a woman and I don't have feminist in my bio because it's assumed.
It's like white ladies who have BLM.
I was just going to say Black Lives Matter and their shit.
Oh, that's your hobby. Interesting.
What do you think about some of the research coming out? What do you think about the 30% having autism?
unsurprising.
Because
I think that the social skills piece goes together. Sorry, this is like my...
what is going on?
I just can't hear out of one, but that's all. It's unsurprising.
Do you want to just take them off?
No, it's okay.
Okay.
It's unsurprising.
Because if you didn't have autism, you weren't sorry, I know you don't have autism. If you weren't a therapist who helped people, what?
I feel like because...
So social skills piece, so not being able to connect as well socially makes you vulnerable to being an incel. What else? I was thinking the black and white thinking. So something about a lot of people with autism is they think really concretely. It's either left or it's right. It's black or it's white. There's no in between, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think there's a lot of black and white thinking in incel, like this notion of like there's a clear path forward. If you behave in this way, you are going to get these results. And the results are either going to be rejection or success. And if you get rejection, it's proof that women are superficial. That's the other thing with the incel conversation is that a lot of the overall held beliefs is that women choose based on looks, which I think is so not accurate. That women choose based on looks. And so the notion is, well, if women are choosing based on looks, then there's nothing I can do to make myself more appealing to women because I'm not attractive. So I don't have to work harder on being likable and all of these things. All I can do is try to make money
It's very rigid.
or look better.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it's very rigid. I think that part makes a lot of sense to me. And I think a lot of the people that I work with who have autism have really hard times in adolescence because of the way peers respond to them. And so I could see how being rejected constantly would put you in this position to run to an internet community. I also thought 42% of incels being people of color was interesting because I think I thought of them as mostly white people. And I'm not saying that that isn't majority white, but it's disproportionately people of color based on just the statistics here.
Like, I think in my head, an incel is also the same type of person who does a mass shooting.
Okay.
That's all the same spectrum to me.
I mean, I think that that's part of it. And that's definitely what the media portrays, right? Is like this kid shot up the school because he hates women. And he had a list of all the girls who made fun of him.
Right.
But I hate women, and I wouldn't shoot up a school.
No, well,
you might shoot up a clinic,
this is.
though.
I don't know if I said this.
House,
I don't know if I said this before, but the people who scare me in life are people who don't have self-preservation. So, like, whether you're a good person or not, most people aren't going to shoot up the school because of the consequences it has for them.
Yep.
And once you start caring about the consequences for you and how things impact you, you are truly a loose cannon. Mm-hmm. You're no way you're caring about other people if you're don't care about yourself.
You're not a rational actor if you're not doing that. Yeah.
You can't be predicted.
Yep.
You don't have any hesitation. Like, a lot of people, some people don't cheat because, they think it's wrong. But often people don't cheat because they don't think they're going to get away with it.
Our whole society's designed around the assumption that people behave rationally.
And monitoring people.
Well, we have to do that because
it is.
we don't we have to do that because otherwise it's going to be like an authoritarian state.
Right. So I'm saying when people buck that, it's like we have no answer for it.
No, I mean, it's getting on a bus or an airplane is a trust fall. Mm-hmm. It's a trust fall.
Especially these
You
days.
have no idea that anybody else on that bus or that airplane, getting in your car is a trust fall. You're trusting that nobody's going to smash into you while you're driving. Mm-hmm. It's so interesting to me because people get this really big social anxiety sometimes or they're afraid to leave their house. And I genuinely believe a lot of them are like, oh, crap, I can't pretend like I'm not risking my life when I leave the house. You are. But it's such a minute chance that something's going to go wrong and you can't focus on that. You have no control over that.
Yeah.
People get in this mind space where they're like, I have to control this. I have to be able to control every aspect of my life. And if I can't, I'm not going to be well. That's not reality.
Right.
When you send your kids to school, it's a trust fall.
It is. That's so scary for a lot of parents.
It's not you don't have that much control.
No.
I mean, you just really don't.
What's interesting, I'm reading that one of the statistics here about predicting harm, and it says the predictive powers of mental health and ideology were more than twice that of networking. And I feel like that.
I don't know what any of that meant. Help me.
I feel like, what I take from that feels like it underlines the point for me that, yes, it's like a loneliness epidemic. And yes, it's about their connectivity to other people. And yes, it's about, feeling accepted by women and all that stuff. But then mental health and ideology it says are like really more better predicting powers for like if they're going to be an incel or not.
But that makes sense because what we're talking about
It does make sense.
isn't the cause. I think what people hear when we say like loneliness or being rejected by women, that's not the cause. That's a symptom, right?
People do think of it as
it's not the cause. It's a symptom. It's
Yes.
things that can make you vulnerable. Also, like vulnerability factors. It's things that can make you vulnerable to becoming an incel. It is not
Yes.
the route to becoming an incel. All of those things have to be paired with something else, and we don't really know what the something else is.
I'm so glad you phrased it like that because I feel like there's all, Time had something and
Yeah.
like, there's all these articles that now come out about men being lonely, you're not having friends, connection, whatever it is. But it's framed as the reason is because they aren't dating or because they can't. It's framed as the reason. So I'm glad you framed it as like that's.
I think what's happening specifically in this adolescence kind of piece, right?
Yeah.
So we're talking about a 13-year-old, right?
Yeah.
Is that we are there's an environment being created online that teaches them that like the normal and regular woes that they experience as they are forming their identities and getting social skills are actually like proof that something's wrong with them.
Yep.
And I think they can't build their identity. They can't build self-esteem. And then that ends up perpetuating what was already going on in terms of mental illness, right? Because I think majority of kids see that content and whether they agree with it or not, feel like that doesn't really tie that much to their day-to-day experience.
Right. They're able to filter out.
Yes.
That's some weird shit.
And then last but not least, because we have to go, there was a scene, episode 3, with a psychologist or psychiatrist where she basically came and she was supposed to be doing like a pre-assessment to, I guess, try to get a gauge of his ability to understand right or wrong because of his age, pre-trial. To be in court. And anybody who's interested in seeing a weird therapy scene, you should watch that because the way that they play off of each other is really gross. And she's totally super overinvested and very emotionally kind of unhinged at points, which is probably not how other people saw it. But for me as a therapist, I was watching her lose control of her emotion because a 13-year-old was poking holes in her and perpetuating misogynistic and patriarchal stereotypes, and she got triggered.
Literally.
And also, I think, realized in that moment that he did it. So that was really interesting to watch. Anything from that part as a therapist that stood out to you?
I actually I think it was interesting and how easily it just went into, she was like, he got the power imbalance.
Yeah.
She lost kind of the power struggle and it was really obvious. And I felt that it was just really disappointing. Like I kind of thought that maybe she was going to do that and like there was no redemption. He just like won the.
Yeah. And he kind of won at the beginning and then she took a break and then she came back and re-engaged. And it was like, she was trying to get something out of him or understand him because she was asking all these questions about his views on manhood and masculinity and trying to get like this full understanding of him. And it was so obvious that she needed that.
Yes.
And he was like not wanting to give it to her. And she was basically begging him to give it to her. Tell me how you see women. Tell me how you see life. Like it was probably her own gut having to work out that she's going to write that this 13-year-old knew what he was doing and should go to jail for 20 years.
Yes.
But she was trying so hard to like know every piece of him. And it was gross.
And it was like surprising to her. Like at the beginning, she offered him the sandwich. And then at the end was like, didn't want to like interact with him, didn't want to give him more. And I was like, yes, she's like, she's putting up a boundary sort of, but she's also like, what did she think he was going to do? Like you are dealing with you're going off the assumption that he did hurt somebody. So I don't know. It's just.
Was that brilliant writing or was that flawed writing?
I think it was good writing.
It was good writing. It just pissed me off that like it played that way. I just wanted the therapist to have a little bit more like.
And also every interaction that she had with a man in that episode was demeaning. So she was also like being broken down throughout the process. Like it showed her being kind of watched and like men being kind of creepy and weird who were working in the facility. So I also think it was just like the environment was kind of like a commentary of how the manosphere impacts women in like one episode. But to have her crumble under the 13-year-old was really hard to watch.
Or how one bad, quote unquote, bad woman can spoil it for the rest of you in a sense, right? Like she can feed his incel like his narrative.
It was actually like she was trying to prove that she wasn't what he thought she was, which was the
Yeah.
pathetic part.
Yeah.
Because why are you
Same.
trying to prove that to a 13-year-old? Like, why do you care what this 13-year-old thinks of you?
Because women are lesser than men.
with.
And are.
Like,
And on that note, goodbye.
You guys need to watch We Need to Talk About Kevin, and I'll watch this.
It's the end of the weekend.